The fluorescent light flickers as the rusty lock finally gives way. Inside the cramped storage unit number 237, behind boxes covered in decades of dust, a frame catches the light. The cleaning lady's hands tremble as she pulls away a stained sheet. Beneath it, colors emerge. Vibrant, impossible, breathtaking. She doesn't know it yet, but what she's holding in her weathered hands is worth more than every house on her street combined. The question that will haunt investigators for years: why would someone hide a fortune in a $50 storage unit and leave it to the woman who cleaned their floors? If you're fascinated by stories of forgotten treasures and lives transformed by unexpected inheritance, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any exploration. Now, let me tell you how we got here, because this story begins not with wealth, but with mockery and a funeral no one attended. The story starts in a cramped apartment in Newark, New Jersey, where Maria Santos has lived for 37 years. The building's paint peels like sunburned skin, and the hallways smell of boiled cabbage and decades of other people's lives. Maria is 63 years old, her hands permanently reddened from industrial cleaning solutions, her back curved from years of bending over other people's messes. She works 6 days a week, sometimes 7, cleaning office buildings after everyone else goes home. Her uniform is always the same: faded blue shirt, black pants worn thin at the knees, shoes with soles she's glued back together 3 times. She's invisible to most people she encounters, just another face in the army of cleaners who make the world spotless while the world sleeps. For 22 years, Maria cleaned the offices of Hartwell & Associates, a mid-sized accounting firm on the 4th floor of a downtown building constructed in 1968. The firm occupied 3,000 square feet of unremarkable space. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, carpets the color of institutional gray. Maria arrived every weeknight at 7 p.m. sharp, her cart loaded with supplies, and worked until 2 in the morning. She emptied trash cans, vacuumed floors, wiped down desks, scrubbed bathrooms, and polished glass that would be fingerprinted again by noon the next day. In 22 years, she never missed a single night except when her daughter gave birth and when her husband died. The employees of Hartwell & Associates barely noticed Maria. She was part of the landscape like the water cooler or the copy machine. But one person did notice her: Walter Brennan, the senior partner who founded the firm in 1981. Walter was 74 years old when Maria started cleaning his office, already a widower, already living alone in a house too big for one person. Unlike his colleagues who rushed past Maria with barely a nod, Walter always greeted her. "Good evening, Mrs. Santos," he would say, looking up from whatever document kept him at the office past 8 p.m. "How is your family?" It was a small kindness, but in Maria's world of invisibility, small kindnesses felt enormous. Over the years, a ritual developed. Walter would stay late deliberately on certain nights, and he and Maria would talk. Not long conversations, she had work to do and he respected that, but meaningful ones. He learned about her daughter studying nursing, about her son who wanted to be a teacher, about her husband's diabetes, about the leak in her apartment ceiling that the landlord ignored for 11 months. Maria learned that Walter had been married for 46 years before his wife died of cancer, that they'd never had children, that he filled his house with things he loved because there was no one to share it with. He mentioned art sometimes, how he'd spent decades collecting pieces that spoke to him, not for investment but for joy. "Beauty shouldn't be locked away in vaults," he once told her. "It should be lived with, even if you're the only one who sees it." When Walter retired at 81, he threw a small party at the office. His colleagues gave speeches about his contributions to the firm, presented him with a gold watch, and promised to stay in touch. Maria wasn't invited to the party. It was during the day, and cleaners weren't considered part of such events. But the next evening, when she arrived for her shift, there was an envelope on the desk in Walter's now empty office. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive paper. "Mrs. Santos, thank you for 22 years of kindness and conversation. You made long nights less lonely. Please accept this small token of my gratitude. Tucked in the envelope were 5 $100 bills. More money than Maria made in a week. She cried in the empty office, holding that note like it was made of gold. That was 7 years ago. Maria heard through office gossip that Walter had moved to a retirement community in Florida, that he was doing well, that he'd finally left the cold winters behind. She thought of him sometimes, wondered if he was happy, hoped he'd found people to talk to in his new life. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March, she received a call from a law office she'd never heard of. "Is this Maria Elena Santos?" the voice asked. "This is regarding the estate of Walter Brennan. Can you come to our office this week? There's a matter of inheritance." Maria's first thought was that there'd been a mistake. Walter barely knew her. They'd had pleasant conversations, yes, but inheritance? That was for family, for real relationships, not for the cleaning lady. Still, she took the bus to the lawyer's office on Thursday afternoon, wearing her only dress, the black one she'd worn to her husband's funeral 4 years earlier. The lawyer, a woman in her 40s with glasses and an expression of permanent skepticism, looked Maria up and down as if calculating whether this was worth her time. "Mr. Brennan passed away 3 weeks ago," she said, sliding papers across her desk. "He left you something, a storage unit, number 237 at Safekeep Storage on Route 22. The rent has been paid through the end of this year. Here's the key and the paperwork. The unit's contents are yours." Maria stared at the key, confused. "A storage unit? What's in it?" The lawyer shrugged. "No idea. Mr. Brennan's instructions were specific. The unit goes to you unopened. He left similar bequests to several people. Small items, sentimental things mostly. This one cost him $50 a month for 23 years. Whatever's inside, it was important enough to him to keep paying for it all that time." The lawyer's tone suggested she thought the whole thing was ridiculous. As Maria left the office, she heard the lawyer on the phone. "You won't believe this. He left a storage unit to his cleaning lady. God knows what junk is in there. Some people's sentimentality knows no bounds." Maria told her daughter about the inheritance that evening. Her daughter, Sandra, now a nurse at St. Barnabas Hospital, laughed. Not cruelly, but with the exhausted humor of someone who'd seen too much to believe in fairy tales. "Mama, it's probably full of old tax documents or broken furniture. Rich people are weird about storage. Remember when Mrs. Chun died and left her cat $5,000? Still, Sandra offered to come with her mother on Sunday to open the unit. Maria's co-workers at the cleaning company heard about it too. $50 storage unit? One laughed. "Don't get your hopes up, Maria. You'll probably find Christmas decorations and old National Geographics. My uncle left me a storage unit once. Took me 3 trips to the dump to get rid of all the crap. Sunday arrives cold and gray. The kind of March day that can't decide whether it's still winter or tentatively spring." Maria and Sandra drive to Safekeep Storage in Sandra's 12-year-old Honda Civic with the check engine light perpetually glowing. The facility sprawls across 4 acres of asphalt, rows of orange metal doors numbered in white paint, a chain-link fence surrounding the perimeter. It's the kind of place where people store things they don't want but can't throw away, physical manifestations of unresolved decisions. The office is closed on Sundays, but the gate code the lawyer provided works. They drive slowly through the maze of identical buildings until they find Unit 237 on the ground floor of Building C, a standard 10 by 10 space with a door that's seen better decades. As Maria approaches with the key, she notices something odd. While other units nearby show signs of regular access, tire marks in front of doors, relatively clean locks, recent oil stains, Unit 237 looks untouched. Spider webs connect the lock to the frame. Rust has eaten at the hinges. The concrete in front of the door has grass growing through cracks. "When did the lawyer say someone last opened this?" Sandra asks. Maria checks the paperwork. It doesn't say, but he's been paying for it since 1999. 23 years. Sandra raises her eyebrows. 23 years without opening it once? That's either really sentimental or really weird. Maria inserts the key. It sticks. She jiggles it, applies pressure, and finally feels the mechanism give way with a crack that sounds too loud in the quiet Sunday morning. The lock falls open, and rust dust drifts down like orange snow. She grasps the handle and pulls. The door resists, then suddenly rolls upward with a screech that makes both women wince. The smell hits them immediately, not rot, but age. Stale air that's been sealed for over 2 decades, mixed with dust and something else, something almost sweet. Chemical? Paint? Sandra pulls out her phone and turns on the flashlight. The beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating shapes wrapped in what looks like professional moving blankets. Everything packed with almost military precision. If you're enjoying this discovery, leave a like to support the channel. We're only beginning to understand what Walter left behind. The first thing they notice is how organized everything is. This isn't the chaos of someone throwing junk into storage and forgetting about it. Every item is wrapped, protected, arranged with care. Boxes are stacked against the left wall, each labeled in neat handwriting with codes that mean nothing to Maria. FR 18, IT 07, SP 23. Against the back wall, larger items stand upright, wrapped in blankets secured with professional packing tape that's yellowed with age but still holding firm. The right side of the unit contains what looks like a filing cabinet and several wooden crates marked "Fragile" in faded red letters. Everything is elevated off the ground on wooden pallets, protected from any potential moisture. This is the storage unit of someone who cared deeply about preserving whatever was inside. Sandra steps in first, her nurse's practicality overriding any nervousness. Let's see what we've got, Mama. Start with the boxes, maybe. Maria follows, her heart beating faster than it should. She's not sure what she's feeling. Anticipation, yes, but also something like dread. Walter left her this for a reason, but what reason could possibly require 23 years of paid storage? She approaches the nearest box, marked FR04, and carefully cuts through the tape with the utility knife the lawyer provided. Inside, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, is a frame. She lifts it out, and even through the protective wrapping, she can see colors. Rich blues, vibrant golds, deep reds. Sandra helps her unwrap it. The painting is small, maybe 20 inches by 16 inches. But even in the dim light of the storage unit, even to Maria's untrained eyes, it's beautiful. The scene depicts a woman in a garden. Her dress a swirl of blues and whites, flowers blooming around her in impossible profusion. The style is impressionistic, all light and movement and color. There's a signature in the bottom right corner that Maria can't quite read. Something that starts with an R? Sandra takes a photo with her phone, zooms in on the signature. Renoir, she reads. Pierre-Auguste Renoir. They both stare at the painting, then at each other. That's a famous name, right? Maria's voice is barely a whisper. Like, museum famous? Sandra's hands shake as she searches on her phone. Mama, Renoir he's one of the most famous Impressionist painters. His paintings sell for millions. But this can't be real. It has to be a reproduction. A good one. But she doesn't finish the sentence because Maria has opened another box. Inside is another painting, this one larger, depicting a Spanish dancer in a swirl of red and black. The brushstrokes so confident and bold they seem to move even in stillness. The signature reads Goya. The next box contains a small landscape, all golden light and harvested fields, signed Van Gogh. The next shows a mother and child in soft pastels, signed Cassatt. Box after box, painting after painting, each one wrapped with museum-quality care. Each one bearing a signature that makes Sandra's online searches return results with dollar amounts that seem impossible. They work in silence now, unwrapping piece after piece, laying them carefully on the blankets covering the larger items. A Monet water lilies scene, small but perfect. A Picasso sketch in charcoal that captures a woman's face with just a dozen lines. A small bronze sculpture by Rodin, the metal still cool to the touch after decades. A Matisse cutout in vibrant primary colors. A Degas ballet scene with dancers caught mid-movement. Each discovery makes the previous one seem less impossible and the situation more surreal. By the time they've opened half the boxes, 17 paintings and 3 sculptures are arranged in the storage unit. A private gallery that no one has seen in over 2 decades. Sandra stops, sits down on one of the wooden crates, and stares at her mother. Mama, if even one of these is real, if even one is authentic, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe millions. But if they're all real, she doesn't finish because the possibility is too enormous to speak aloud. Maria's legs feel weak. She leans against the wall, looking at the artwork surrounding her. Why would Walter leave this to me? We just talked sometimes. I cleaned his office. Why not a museum? Why not auction them? Why put them in storage for 23 years? Sandra has no answer. They both know that storage units are where things go to be forgotten, not where treasures worth millions are deliberately hidden. But they haven't opened the wrapped items against the back wall yet. Maria approaches the largest one. A rectangular object about 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide, wrapped so thoroughly in blankets and plastic that its shape is barely discernible. She and Sandra work together to remove the layers of protection. As they peel away the final blanket, both women gasp audibly. The painting beneath is larger than all the others, and even in the inadequate light of the storage unit, its power is undeniable. It shows a woman in profile, her face serene and mysterious, her clothing rendered in Renaissance detail, the background a landscape of impossible perfection. The colors are rich but faded with age, the craquelure of centuries visible across its surface. In the bottom corner, barely visible, is a notation in Old Italian and a symbol, a shield with what looks like a lion. Sandra's hands shake so badly she almost drops her phone as she tries to photograph it. Mama, the style, the age, the technique. This looks like it could be from the Renaissance. Like actually from the 15th or 16th century. Not just a famous painting, but an old master. Museums have entire wings dedicated to paintings like this. Maria touches the frame gently, reverently. It's ornate, gilded, definitely antique, and it alone probably costs more than everything Maria has ever owned. What was Walter doing with this? How did he have this? Why hide it here? They unwrap 3 more large paintings. One appears to be a Dutch Golden Age portrait, all dark backgrounds and dramatic lighting. Another is a religious scene, possibly Italian Baroque, with angels and saints in a composition that speaks of centuries past. The third is a landscape that could be from the Hudson River School, showing American wilderness in romantic grandeur. Each one is not just valuable but historically significant, the kind of painting that appears in art history textbooks. The wooden crates, when carefully opened, contain smaller works, illuminated manuscript pages, antique drawings, etchings, each one protected in archival sleeves. The filing cabinet, when opened, contains documentation, decades of paperwork, receipts, certificates, appraisals, provenance records. Maria and Sandra spread them out on the concrete floor, using Sandra's phone light to read. The receipts date back to the 1960s and 70s, purchases from galleries and auction houses, some from estate sales, some from private collectors. Walter Brennan bought these pieces over decades, carefully, deliberately, building a collection that any museum would envy. The appraisals, conducted in the early 1990s before the pieces were apparently moved to storage, list values in the millions even then. One document from 1998, the year before Walter moved the collection to storage, shows a comprehensive inventory and appraisal by a certified art appraiser. Total estimated value of the collection at that time was $47 million. Sandra's voice cracks. Mama, that was in 1998. Art values have increased dramatically since then. With inflation, with the market. If this appraisal was accurate then, these pieces could be worth. She does quick calculations on her phone, her nursing training making her comfortable with numbers. Conservative estimate, with market appreciation, we're looking at maybe over $100 million. If that Renaissance painting is what I think it might be, it alone could be worth $50 million or more. Mama, I think we're looking at one of the most valuable private art collections that no one knew existed. Maria slides down to sit on the cold concrete, her back against the filing cabinet, staring at the artwork surrounding her in this ordinary storage unit in New Jersey. The fluorescent light from the hallway casts everything in harsh reality, making the situation feel even more impossible. The cleaning lady who makes $30,000 a year, who's never been inside a museum, who lives in an apartment with a leaking ceiling and 40-year-old appliances, is sitting in a storage unit containing artwork worth more than the GDP of small countries. The mockery she endured last week. Co-workers laughing about her $50 storage unit inheritance. The lawyer's condescending tone. Even her own daughter's skeptical laughter. Echoes in her mind with bitter irony. Sandra finds a letter in the filing cabinet, sealed in an envelope with Maria's name written in Walter's careful handwriting. Maria's hands tremble as she opens it. The letter is dated 2 years earlier, suggesting Walter wrote it when he knew his time was growing short. Sandra reads it aloud, her voice breaking several times. Dear Mrs. Santos, if you're reading this, I've passed on, and you've opened the storage unit. I imagine you're confused, perhaps frightened, certainly overwhelmed. Let me explain. This collection represents my life's passion. I didn't inherit wealth. I built it through hard work, just as you have. The difference is that fortune smiled on me in ways it hasn't on you. And that's not fair, but it's reality. I never had children. I have no close family. When my wife died, I realized that the things I'd collected meant nothing without someone to share them with. I could have left them to museums, but museums have enough. They would sit in climate-controlled storage, seen by a few scholars, appreciated by fewer still. Instead, I'm leaving them to you. Not because you need the money, though I know you do, and I hope this transforms your life, but because you're one of the few people who ever saw me as human rather than just a senior partner or a wealthy old man. You asked about my day. You remembered my wife's name. You noticed when I was sad and asked if I was okay. Those small kindnesses, repeated over 22 years, mattered more than you'll ever know. This collection is yours to do with as you wish. Sell it all and live comfortably. Donate it and claim the tax benefits. Keep pieces that speak to you. I don't care. What I care about is that kindness is rewarded, because in my experience it so rarely is. The world will question this decision. People will say I was senile, that you manipulated me, that this can't possibly be legitimate. Lawyers will challenge it. The press will mock it. Your life will become complicated in ways you can't imagine. I'm sorry for that, but I've made sure everything is legal, documented, and unchallengeable. The collection is yours, free and clear. My only request is that you remember that these paintings were created by human hands, that they represent someone's passion and vision, and that they deserve respect. Also, there's a small Monet, the one with water lilies, that my wife particularly loved. If you could keep that one or donate it to a museum in her name, I'd be grateful. But again, the choice is yours. Thank you, Mrs. Santos, for 22 years of conversation and kindness. Thank you for treating an old man like he mattered. I hope this brings you joy and security. You deserve both. With gratitude and respect, Walter Brennan. The letter flutters in Maria's hand as tears stream down her face. Sandra is crying too, the phone light shaking as her hands tremble. They sit in silence for a long time, surrounded by hundreds of millions of dollars in artwork, in this 10 by 10 storage unit that smells of dust and age and impossible kindness. Eventually, Sandra speaks, her voice practical despite her tears. Mama, we need to secure this immediately. We need lawyers, art experts, insurance, security. We can't leave this here another minute. Even with the lock, even with the gate code, this is... She gestures at the paintings. This is too much to risk. They carefully rewrap the paintings, taking photos of each one first, documenting everything. Sandra calls a friend whose cousin works in art insurance, explains the situation in hushed, urgent tones, and gets recommendations for art security companies that handle emergency situations. By Monday morning, the storage unit is under 24-hour armed guard. By Monday afternoon, Maria is sitting in a conference room with 3 lawyers, 2 art authentication experts, and an insurance specialist who keeps adjusting his glasses and staring at the inventory list like it might suddenly make sense. By Monday evening, the first news stories begin to appear. Cleaning lady inherits fortune in art from employer. Though the value is still unknown, the authentication process just beginning. The authentication process takes 6 months. Each painting must be examined by multiple experts, subjected to X-rays, chemical analysis, provenance verification, and comparison with known works. The Renaissance painting turns out to be even more significant than initially thought. It's a newly discovered work by Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, possibly with da Vinci's own hand involved, a find that sends shockwaves through the art world. The Renoir, Van Gogh, Monet, and others are all authenticated as genuine. 2 paintings turn out to be extremely skilled forgeries from the 1970s, worth only a few $1,000s as historical curiosities, but the rest are authentic. The final authenticated value of the collection, $423 million. The mockery transforms into media frenzy. The lawyer who was condescending at their first meeting calls repeatedly, offering to handle the estate for a reduced fee, her tone now sickeningly sweet. Co-workers who laughed about the $50 storage unit suddenly remember how they always thought Maria was special, how they'd had feelings this would turn out well. Distant relatives Maria hasn't heard from in decades emerge with stories of family bonds and casual mentions of financial difficulties. The firm where Maria cleaned for 22 years, which never invited her to Walter's retirement party, issues a press release celebrating their longtime employees' good fortune, as if they had anything to do with it. But there are also letters, thousands of them, from other cleaning ladies, other invisible workers who see themselves in Maria's story, from people who've shown kindness without reward and find hope in the idea that sometimes, rarely, it matters, from art students who are inspired that one of the world's great collections was assembled not by institutions but by a man who simply loved beauty, from people who've been mocked, dismissed, and overlooked who find vindication in Maria's transformation from joke to headline. One letter particularly moves Maria, from a janitor in Ohio. You've shown the world that the person cleaning the floor might have more grace than everyone walking on it. Thank you for that. Maria sells most of the collection through major auction houses over the following year. The Leonardo workshop painting alone sells for $87 million to a private collector. The Renoir goes to a museum for $42 million. Piece by piece, the collection disperses to museums, private collectors, and institutions around the world. But Maria keeps 3 pieces. The small Monet that Walter's wife loved, which she donates to a museum with a plaque in Walter's wife's name. A small impressionist painting of a woman cleaning, which she finds both ironic and perfect, and a sketch of hands holding each other, artist unknown but clearly old, which reminds her that connection matters more than value. After taxes, fees, and legal costs, Maria's share is approximately $280 million. She retires from cleaning, though she's only 64. She buys a modest house, not a mansion, just a comfortable home with a yard and a kitchen that doesn't have leaks. She pays off her daughter's nursing school loans and her son's student debt. She sets up a foundation that provides college scholarships for children of cleaning workers, janitors, and service employees. She funds art education programs in public schools. She donates generously to museums with the requirement that they offer free admission days for service workers. She lives comfortably but not ostentatiously, drives a reliable car but not a luxury one, and continues to wear her old black shoes with the glued soles sometimes, because they're comfortable and they remind her where she came from. The storage unit itself becomes part of the story's mythology. Safekeep Storage tries to capitalize on it, offering tours of the famous Unit 237. But Maria pays them to stop, to let it return to being just another orange door among thousands. She doesn't want pilgrims and tourists. The unit sits empty now, the rent no longer paid, eventually rented to someone else who has no idea of its history, who stores Christmas decorations and old furniture like every other unit in the facility. The lock has been changed. The door no longer sticks. The grass in the concrete cracks has been sprayed away. It's just a storage unit again, ordinary and forgotten, which is perhaps appropriate. But one mystery remains unresolved. One question that Maria ponders often in her new life. Why storage? Walter could have kept the collection in his house, could have donated it to museums years earlier, could have sold it and lived even more comfortably. Why seal it away in 1999 and pay $50 a month for 23 years to keep it hidden? The answer, Maria believes, is in the year. 1999 was when Walter's wife died. The collection they'd built together, the beauty they'd surrounded themselves with, became too painful to live with after she was gone. But he couldn't sell it or give it away, not yet. So he stored it, preserved it, kept it safe while he figured out what it meant without her. And eventually, in his declining years, he realized it could mean something new. It could be the vehicle for the grandest gesture of gratitude and kindness that his resources allowed. As Maria sits in her new home's garden, the small impressionist painting of the cleaning woman hanging in her living room, she thinks about Walter's final gift. It wasn't just the artwork or the money, though those changed her life in practical ways beyond measure. The real gift was the message. Your kindness was seen, your humanity was recognized, you mattered. In a world that treats service workers as invisible, as interchangeable parts of the machinery that keeps society running, Walter used his final act to declare loudly that the cleaning lady was worthy of treasures, that her small daily kindnesses were worth $423 million of recognition, that being seen is sometimes more valuable than being wealthy, though in this case, Maria received both. The painting of the cleaning woman shows her in a grand hallway, brush in hand, light streaming through windows she's just polished. The woman's face is turned toward that light, and there's something in her expression, dignity, perhaps, or quiet pride in work done well. Maria looks at it every morning and thinks of Walter, of their brief conversations in empty offices, of the improbable friendship between a wealthy man and the woman who cleaned his workspace. She thinks about how easily she could have been less kind, could have just done her job without the conversations, could have been invisible by choice rather than by circumstance. And she thinks about how different her life would be if she had made those choices. The art world continues to analyze the collection, to study the pieces that emerged from Storage Unit 237, to debate their significance and marvel at their preservation. Academic papers are written about Walter's eye for quality and his prescient purchases. Art historians examine his collection strategy, his focus on works that spoke to human connection and beauty rather than pure investment value. But for Maria, the collection represents something simpler, proof that attention and kindness create value beyond currency, that seeing another person's humanity is an act of profound importance, and that sometimes, rarely, impossibly, the universe arranges itself to reward goodness in ways that feel like fairy tales but are documented, authenticated, and real. At the museum where the Monet hangs, a plaque reads, Water Lilies, Claude Monet, 1915. Gift of Maria Santos in memory of Catherine Brennan, who loved beauty. Visitors pause before it, read the plaque, and move on to the next painting, unaware of the full story. That the woman who donated this painting worth $35 million used to make $30,000 a year. That she inherited it from a man whose office she cleaned for 22 years. That it came from a storage unit that cost $50 a month. That the whole improbable story began with simple acts of kindness repeated over decades between two people who had no reason to connect except their shared humanity. If this story moved you, Leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of unexpected discoveries and lives transformed by unlikely inheritances. In the comments, share your thoughts. What would you do if you inherited a fortune like Maria's? Would you keep any of the art or sell it all? Hit the bell to be notified when we explore the next incredible story. Until the next journey through the unexpected places where treasures hide and kindness finds its reward.